Hello, I'm Claudia Kane. This is Behind the Scenes. This is all about my chronic illness. And today is part 3 of my chronic illness. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Leave a comment if you would. And disclaimers, nothing I say is ever medical advice. And everything is my own lived experience. And number 2, I will always try and tell the truth and give you as much of the story as I can. But everything is my perspective and my side of the story. And as we all know, there are 2 sides to every story. So I am just telling you my perspective of things that happen. And number 3, I will try to never hurt anybody with what I'm saying. So while I'm trying to be as honest as possible, sometimes there are things I have to leave out just to not hurt other people. Those are my disclaimers. So when we left, I had just graduated high school. I forgot to mention there were some major things I had done to my body during this time. And it's interesting to note because I am now having issues from those things that happened in high school. So the first one was I had been dared. And I'm really looking back on this now, I'm like, where were the coaches? Where were the teachers? We were in the weight room at the high school and somebody's like, I bet you can't lift all these weights. And it was the machine where you lay on your back and you push up the weights with your legs. And I don't know what that machine's called, but like they put all the weights on there and I'm an idiot. And I'm like, of course I can. So I did. Lifted it. The whole room's like, I can't believe she did that. And then I went to work at Kmart where I was a cashier, bent over to put something in the bag I had just rang up, and I couldn't stand up. So mom had to take me to the chiropractor, who put me on the table that dropped down, and he had to pull my spine back apart because I had compressed my spine. I still have issues, and I have had chronic issues with my lower spine since then. So that was the first major thing that I did to myself. And mind you, I was klutzy, and not klutzy as in knocked things over, but klutzy as in fell down and ran into stuff a lot. So I always had a bruise on my hip or my thigh from whacking into tables and stuff. I also took a good hard fall on wet grass while running when I was 17, and they thought I'd broken my wrist, just bruised my wrist, sprained it a little. What I'd actually done, because I fell on like this whole side, was I had rotated my kneecap, walked around for a year with it just giving out. My knee would just give out and I'd go down. Just figured it out a year later when my chiropractor looked at my medical record and realized that a year before I'd taken that fall and had hurt my knee and my wrist, but they'd been more concerned about my wrist. I'd had x-rays on my wrist, fixed my knee, but that's the knee that now I've got a torn meniscus in, and that's the knee that gives me problems. It's also the hip that gives me problems. So there were things that I did back then that are now, that have given me slight problems all through life and now are giving me major problems. So like I just never healed from things. I was also very flexible and bendy. I could put my legs behind my head. I'm not double jointed, but I was very bendy. And I thought that was everybody, but turns out it's not. And then the other thing that I forgot to mention is I passed out all the time. All the time. And I would forget to eat. And then I would get weak. And then everything would start to go black. And then I'd go down. So when I was 17, I started dating my first serious boyfriend, who recognized that if I didn't eat, I passed out. And also I was very cranky, and he fed me more often. And that's when I put that together that, oh, I pass out when I'm probably hypoglycemic. Was never diagnosed hypoglycemic, but I did pass out if I forgot to eat, and I was super skinny and super busy, and I forgot to eat all the time. Like I never felt hungry, so I just didn't eat. So I graduated and moved out. And my mom was crushed because I was not a bad teenager. We did not have fights. I was not rebellious. I just wanted my own space. I just wanted peace and quiet. And, you know, in the first video, I mentioned that I didn't sleep as a baby. I never slept. I never slept. And as a teenager, I would lie awake. Rest of the house is quiet. It's 3 o'clock in the morning. I know I've got to get up in a couple hours and go to high school, and I can't sleep. My brain never shut up. Never. My brain has always felt like there are, you know, 10 different conversations going on in there. There's music playing in the background somewhere that just won't stop. There's somebody counting. The back of my brain is always counting, and not always 1, 2, 3, sometimes 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, just always counting in my brain along with the music. Just my brain never shuts up, never. So not only was high school hard, but then I'm not getting regular sleep. So a lot of times I would go to school and fall asleep in my first period. First period was also the class that I almost failed my junior year. It was all bad. So I move out when I'm 18, and I didn't move far. I just moved a little up the street and down a side street. I could walk home and do my laundry is how close I moved. And I've quit working at Kmart, and now I'm working as a waitress. So I'm a waitress, and we were expected to carry the trays like this. And so by the time I'm 19, now I've been diagnosed with carpal tunnel syndrome. And so I'm still super thin. I do not own a car or have a driver's license, so I walk everywhere. And I always walked everywhere when I was a teenager too. I had a dog, and we would go and walk for a couple hours. And sometimes after I'd been walking for more than an hour, my brain would get quiet. And that was, I would get some peace. My brain would get quiet. But it didn't happen all the time. And a lot of times when I was taking her for a walk, I had to be back to do other things. So I had to be back to get to work, or I had to be back to do homework, or, you know. So the walks had gotten less frequent. When I moved out, I couldn't have pets, so I didn't take her with me. Although I saw her often because I was at home doing laundry. So now I've been diagnosed with carpal tunnel syndrome on top of everything else. And so I had a couple different jobs, and I had the same boyfriend from 17 to almost 21. I was 20 a couple of months before my birthday when we broke up. It broke my heart because that was my first serious boyfriend. And by now I've also had a couple different apartments. I moved on average, I don't know, like every 6 months to a year I moved. And one of my friends at one point is like, I'm not going to help you move anymore. You have too many books. I owned more books than I owned clothes. And so all through this, I'm still having, endometriosis. I didn't mention it. I never remembered to mention in the other video. I had been diagnosed with endometriosis by the time I was 15, 16. I was on pain meds for it. And that still has not gotten any better. I've done everything I'm supposed to as far as like curbing PMS symptoms. So I've cut out caffeine. I drink a gallon of water every day, you know, and I walk miles every day. I walk to the grocery store. I walk to work. I walk to see my mom, my family. I walk everywhere. So I'm like at the peak of healthiness as I can be, right? And I'd never, you know, now I'm 20. I've broken up with my first serious boyfriend, my first love. I've never had a sip of alcohol. I've never tried a cigarette. Like, I should be super healthy, but I'm not. And so I lost weight. I was like a size 5. I was still like a small. And when he and I split up, because that was a 3-year relationship, I thought this was the man I was going to marry. We split up, and I immediately lose a ton of weight just because I'm heartbroken. I'm devastated. Now I'm a size 1, a size 0. I'm like unhealthy thin. It took like 6 months to regulate and get back to my size 5-ness. But I have an apartment. Now my parents have moved out of the city into the house they're in now. And I'm in an apartment up the street. And I'm almost 21. So it's the month before I turned 21. And I had a couple of friends say, hey, we're going to come over and hang out. Can we bring some wine coolers with us? Now, up to this point, I had always been like, no alcohol in my house. Not having that. Don't drink. No. And so for the first time in my life, I'm like, yeah, sure. Okay. So month before I turned 21 is the first time I ever have alcohol. And my brain shut up. Brain shut up. Had some wine coolers. My brain shuts up. It was the best thing in the world. And I slept that night. And so then I started drinking, which was not good, but it shut my brain up. And then when I turned 21, discovered dancing in clubs, which dancing for 3 hours straight shut my brain up. And so and I'm not talking like we go to the bar, we get a drink and we hang out, we dance a song and look cute and sit back down. No, I'm talking on the dance floor, 3 hours straight, sweat pouring off of you, just losing yourself in the music, and the brain shuts up. It was amazing. It was amazing. So, during this point in time, I'm still working full time. I'm still paying my bills. But I'm also now, I've got a job at a video store that doesn't close until midnight. I'm closing up, getting out of there between 12:15 and 12:30. And then I'm heading out to go dancing and drinking. And so I'm still walking everywhere, still don't have a license, still walking everywhere. And I'm working 3 jobs at one point. 2 of them were between 30 and 35 hours a week. One was TJ Maxx, and then the other was the video store. And my third job was Wednesday nights. I was a bartender. So I get to work by 9:30 in the morning. I'm off by 5 from TJ Maxx. And by 6, I have walked to my second job, and I'm working until 12:30 at night. And then I'm going out, and then I'm getting up, and I'm doing it all again. So this is my life. This is how busy I am, and this is the point that I am at. And they offered me full-time assistant manager position at the video store. So I stop working at TJ Maxx and I take the full-time position, and then the bar changes ownership and they didn't need me on Wednesday nights anymore. Now I'm down to 1 job, but it's full-time. And so my boss calls me frantic because the owner of the store wants the game cage moved around, and can I come in on my day off? The whole 8-hour shift will be overtime. And I'm like, of course I can. So I already have these workaholic tendencies. I always have tendencies to throw myself into everything 1,000% and overdo it. And I have no boundaries at all. None. No personal boundaries, no work boundaries. If you ask me to do something, I'm going to say yes. The words come out of my mouth they completely bypass my brain. So I'm always overdoing it with everything that I do in my life. And it didn't even occur to me that isn't the thing I should do. And so I go into work that day and we're moving the game cage, and there's a sign, about 40-pound sign that fits up over the game cage, and it had to come out so we could move the game cage around, and then it had to be put back in. So my boss is holding it back in, but he'd forgotten to get the screws, and he needs me to get them. So I step under while he's holding it up there on the ladder to get him the tools that he needs to get it back in where it's supposed to go. And it slips out of his hand and falls on my head and neck right here. And I'd put my arm up, and so whacks into my wrist and it knocks me out. And he's the store manager. There were 2 locations of this particular video store. It was a small franchise owned by a guy in Michigan. And we're all 20-somethings that work there. This is your very 1990s typical video store, kind of workplace. The other manager from the second location had come in that day just to say hey or drop off videos. I don't know what she was doing, but they were both there. So both store managers from both locations are there when this sign knocks me out. And I came to on the ground with them laughing. No one called a squad. No one did anything. I was allowed to go home after this happened. So I never got scans. I never got MRIs. Nothing ever until later on. And so that's where we're going to end the story now. So now I've had this very traumatic injury to head and neck, right side. And I was 22 when this happened. It was 1996. We're going to end it there. So that was part 3. And thanks for watching.